before we start, this is the bit I wanted to get you on because I really wanted to embarrass you first beforehand in a really loving way. So, just a little bit about the reason why I started to look into masculine energy, feminine energy, was because I went through a real period in transformation where, just a little statistic, 80% of people in the well-being space are female, and 80% of people accessing well-being are female. And I think the latest statistic is 76% of people, men, commit suicide, which I think is a really interesting statistic, that well-being is kind of really, really weighted to be more female-centric because that is more of a female energy, right? And men don't tend to want to access that. And that was my own personal journey, really, that I felt quite lonely in that space. And it was because I later realized that I started to look into my goddess energy and, you know, my inner goddess coming out in 2022 was this thing about, and you mentioned it, Laura, before when we spoke on the side about, you know, men tend to protect themselves a lot more and can't open that up. And what really used to annoy me was a lot of females talking about, you know, men should access wellness. And you were the first person I can say that I found you on Instagram, and you were just what I would call a real woman.
Oh,
and when I say a real, yeah, and what I say when I mean that is, the word that I would say is, when I listen to what you say as a man, I feel safe. Wow. And I think it's really important that the work that I do personally, interestingly, most of my clients are females that are stuck in their masculine, or they've been on that masculine road, and some of the outcomes of that is that they have issues communicating with men. And what I've noticed is, and I think we can all say this, men tend not to grow up, but we put the superhero outfit on, and the little boy inside, when it can't be heard, when the little boy can't have that purpose, that meaning can't be expressed, is unable to open their heart to be able to talk in a way that they can be heard. And what I love about the work that you do is, although you are talking to women, you are talking to men as well. So I just want to thank you for being on the planet and sharing what you're saying. So I'm gonna leave that now, and I'm gonna let you just introduce yourself and tell everybody about yourself, your journey, what you're doing in the world for those people that don't know. So I will leave that over to you, and I will shut up now.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you saying that. That to me is one of the highest compliments, because being a woman to me is such a, you know, that to me, I hold that compliment in quite high regard, you know, being a woman, a real woman. I do appreciate that. So thank you for that beautiful introduction and compliment. I really appreciate that. That really touched my heart. Thank you. So so my brand, my company is Reigniting Women, and it was made for women, and it is, but yes, I do also speak to men. I like to hold space for men. I don't believe that there's enough space held open for men to be seen and heard, and I love men, and I want men to be able to come to me and be in my energy and feel loved. That's very important to me. So I began my work back in 2015 when I had my first spiritual awakening. That's what I'll call it. Really, it was just a chaotic time in my life where I didn't know who I was and where I was going. And I moved country and I was a bit lost, and it made me sort of return home to myself in a way. I started binge reading Abraham Hicks and Wayne Dyer and Doreen Virtue in her angel days, and just kind of really connecting into this part of me that I'd left behind many years ago, or probably never really connected to, you know. So suddenly I felt like I knew who I was a bit more, and I felt alive. And so the first thing I wanted to do was to give that to the world. So, you know, I quit my job. I was in fashion. I left, I quit. And I actually became a cleaner for a year. I cleaned rich men's toilets. A very humbling job, because that was the only job I could get, because I needed flexible hours, because I wanted to write a book and I wanted to build a website and I wanted to build a channel. So that's what I did. So I kind of sacrificed my career to kind of give my life over to this message about reigniting women, you know. And that couple of years, I mean, I still remember it, and it's such an important time in my life, you know, because I had this old beaten up Ford KA car that my grandma gave me that was literally scratched and beaten up because my grandfather with dementia, who shouldn't have been driving, had been driving it. And, you know, pulling up to these big offices, parking next to these Jaguars and these Ferraris and going in and cleaning these toilets and cleaning these offices. I was like, wow, humble, you know what I mean? But it gave me, I want to sacrifice everything. It gave me a chance to get really solid and grounded in who I was and what I wanted, and to just sit and write. I wanted to write. I wanted to build a website. I wanted to spread a message. And so I took that year to just fully focus on getting this brand up and running. And now it's sort of 8 years later, and people are hearing it and people are enjoying it. And I get to hold that space for men and women. It's just really about bringing women mainly back to their femininity. We live in a world where women are masculine, they're sick. Women come to me every day with issues with the womb, issues with their menstrual cycle, feeling depressed, feeling burnt out, thyroid issues. And doctors are saying to them, well, you know, it's okay. It's pretty common for these things to happen. It's common, but it's not normal. It's a problem. You know what I mean? It's an issue. Being common and normal, two very different things, hey? So, you know, society said, oh, it's common to get anxious. It's common to have period cramps. It's common to be depressed. It's common. It's not normal, though. It's a big sign that you're going in the wrong direction. So reigniting women is really about bringing women back to their feminine in all different ways. You know, there's so many different archetypes.
And you know what, when you talk about that, your kind of mission is the same as mine. So for the people who are watching this that don't know me, serving police officer in a very masculine environment, and got to a point where I just wanted to take my life. And it was in the chaos where you're forced, and I think this is the thing, we're often forced while we're into the dark valley, and we stand there and go, nobody's here, nobody's come to help us. And this, what I call dis-ease inside us, this energy that's trying to get out, and as the Bob Proctor used to say, energy comes from form, through form, and into form. And if we're holding the wrong energy and we're not using it, that dis-ease turns into disease. And so we're not resolving these things. But I think what's really important, I think what I'd like to get out of this is, in the world at the moment, there is a lot of separation. You know, there's lots of statistics. For example, I think it's sort of like under 50% of men are choosing not to have sex, or 50% of men are not even choosing to connect with women. And then women are saying, well, we're lonely because we can't find men. There's this whole confusion and this chaos that's actually happening. And so when I talk to people, when I'm coaching, you know, men and women, and I talk about the feminine and masculine divine, I say it's not about penises and vaginas. You know, it isn't about that. We may tend to lean one way or the other in regards to the energy that we have. So I was very much in my masculine and had to learn to go into my feminine, to open my heart. But when you do that, that can open you up to attack. So I think the next question, I have my interpretation, but you just talk about this subject so articulately that you can say it better than me. So why is it important for us to understand the truth about the masculine and feminine, despite the gender stuff? So if we were to genderize the masculine and the feminine, and you gave me a beautiful explanation of this when we talked, so I hope you can remember what you said. But
I don't.
why is that important, that as men we understand the feminine inside men and the masculine inside us, and within women, how the masculine resides within women and the feminine resides within women, and how by understanding that we can understand each other in a better way to create greater connection and ultimately safety in each other's presence?
Well, the first thing I think that's important is that we stop trying to make each other equal to, make ourselves equal to each other. So this idea of like, I'm equal to a man, I'm absolutely not equal to a man, and I don't need to be, and a man is not equal to me. So it's kind of like accepting that masculine and feminine are two different things and separating them in a good way, because what happens is that when you put them into conjunction together, there's this union, this a real perfect bliss when they work together. So, when we are living in an energy that's not natural, that's against kind of even the body that we've been born into, that's when we start to see the dis-ease. Dis-ease isn't necessarily a negative thing. Dis-ease is the body trying to talk to you and say, hey, there's a problem that you're ignoring. Society's made us afraid of disease because people are also afraid of death, which also is not. Death is just a big orgasm. We don't need to even think about that. Like, that's not even, that's just like not even anything to be afraid of. But when it comes to men and women, it's women, when a woman is in her masculine, we do see issues, and society's kind of brought us into that in a way. But when a woman is in her masculine, she well, first of all, men aren't attracted to that energy. They don't feel safe in that. You know what I mean? They're not drawn to it. So many women are single because they're in their masculine, and they're not owning that. They're not taking power in that. They're not sort of saying, well, hang on a minute, I'll be powerful if I soften and surrender. That's powerful. Women are doing way more than they even realize that they need to. Women are pushing themselves and burning themselves out, and they don't even realize that they're doing it. And they think that that's what makes them worthy. The more I do, the more I am, which is absolutely not true for women. It's more, the more I be, the more I exist, the more powerful I am. I don't need to do things to be worthy of anything. And for men, when men are so good at this logical perspective, they're really good at that. They're really good at seeing things logically, which means that when a woman is in the presence of that masculine man, she softens and she doesn't have to think. She doesn't overthink. She can relax and be, because he has that logical mindset, and he has that strength and that power to soften her. But when men get I believe that it's very important for men to be emotionally available and to be self-aware, because otherwise they tend to kind of go into anger too quickly, which is detrimental. So, men need to be that, but when they lead with their emotions, that's when we also see some depression as well, because when men getting lost in their emotions can be a big issue. And when he's in the presence of a woman, that can be difficult for her as well. So if we kind of accept and become proud of the roles that we've been given, and either soften into it, our role as a woman, or step up and be in the power of being a man, really let that become something, rather than letting society tell you that that's toxic. It's not. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. It's not a thing. It's just, there's either masculinity or maybe there's a lack of, but everyone has a manipulative side. Everyone has a toxic side. We're all human. But I really think that when we soften into our roles, magic happens. Magic really, really happens, and disease fades. And it's actually very easy. It's easy for diseases to fade. People think that, I've been in my masculine for so long, I'm really sick. 2 sessions and you start to see a difference. It's not a big deal, but society will tell you, you're sick, so it's going to take you years to heal, or you're going to have to be on this medication for the rest of your life. It's simply not true.
It is. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. One of the things that when and I'd be interested in how you see this actually, and this is a conversation I have quite a lot when I'm working with women, and they say, my husband, my partner doesn't support me, and one of the interesting phrases is that they always say, I tell him to do this, I tell him this, I tell him that, but he doesn't respond. And one of the phrases that I often use from a communication point of view is, have you asked him what he needs? So are you creating the environment? Because a lot of people don't talk about the environment in which those conversations happen, the rules in which we're going to engage with each other. And when a woman is in her masculine and she is telling a man, then he feels emasculated. He feels as if he's not doing his role, and he can't cope with that. And And sometimes you have to say, hey, I've been trying to communicate with you, but what do you need from me to allow that conversation to happen? Because this is why I talk about the safety. And if I can get this right, this is how you explained it. If I get this
Okay,
wrong,
good, because I don't remember.
okay. So, but it was a beautiful. I've actually had a conversation with people and explain this. So what you said was that for a women can open their hearts, right, quite easily. But when you open your heart, there's a vulnerability in there, and therefore, for a woman to love, to be creative, she needs the masculine to surround her, to allow her to do that thing. And from the man's point of view, he's there to protect and provide and look after the woman. It's not to say that the woman isn't capable. It's just that that's his role. His role is, I need to protect, I need to provide, and the woman is that I need to love, I need to bring the children into the world, whatever it is. And that might sound a little bit Pollyanna, but that's what we were talking about. And then from a man's perspective, if a woman is saying you need to go more vulnerable and you need to open your heart, and the man now has no protection around him in regards to doing that, he's now open to attack. And it's seen in society as weakness. There is no vulnerability without courage. And then what I think happens is, with both sexes, those boundaries that we're helping each other in become barriers. So we now block. So the female is using the masculine energy to project and close herself off. The man is closing himself off even more. So by creating those safe spaces and by softening the barriers to become boundaries, and the boundaries become how we communicate, the language that we use, our love language, understanding how men need to hear your words, and men knowing how women need to hear these words, are so important. That, I don't know if I've got that across properly. You could probably explain it differently, but the word that I use for all of this is, how can we create a space of safety for all of us, so we feel held, but we also feel protected, but we can also grow. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I went a bit off tangent, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, women will thrive in an environment where she's seen, and men will thrive in an environment where he's appreciated.
Yes.
That's really, really crucial. So, if a man can't provide that physical, space where it's like, I pay, I'm basically paying for your safety. If you want a woman, you pay for her safety. So you don't have to worry about, like, the bills are paid, or the roof's over your head, you're safe. That is something that's very attractive to women, because women can then we're so fluid, we're like the ocean. So we want to crash up against you, we want to move, we want to cry, we want to get upset, we want to be happy and joyful and dance and twirl, and we can do that when we have the safety of the four walls and the roof over our head. So when a man provides that for the woman, that immediately will soften her and put her into a feminine state. And then likewise, when she's showing up as that feminine energy, when she's showing up in that softness, all he wants to do is provide and protect her. Like, it's a natural instinct. Like, that's my woman, I want to make sure she's safe, because she's so vulnerable, and I want to make sure I get to be the man that protects her vulnerability. So I think that's when you put those two things together, it's really, really special. And I do think that, if a man isn't in a position where he can do that, he probably needs to work on himself in order to get himself to a point where he can offer that. And I think that women need to not look at relationships until she can find a way to step into her vulnerability. She wants to receive and surrender, because a lot of women aren't willing to do that. When I'm with, I think that when a woman is with a man, she should be doing kind of not the least, but it's like, if you need something done, ask him before you do it yourself. Women have a problem with that. Men like fixing things. Men like problems, because they can go, yes, like, let me figure. Hang on a minute, I can do that. Yeah, let me figure that out. Men love that. And it makes them feel it. And then you kind of ask him to do those things, even though you're perfectly capable of doing them yourself, because you get to stay soft, and he gets to fix a problem. And then afterwards, when the problem is fixed, you appreciate him, and you say thank you, and you love him, and you appreciate him, and you make him a good meal, or you make love to him, or whatever you want to do. So when you kind of have that beautiful cycle for men and women, couples thrive. But we see women trying to be the man, and thinking that, and I don't know, really don't know where this comes from, you know, being offended, for example, that he opens a door. If I'm about to step into a building and there's a man approaching that building at the same time, I don't open the door. I stand there and look at him and smile, say morning, and I wait. And he opens the door for me, and he feels it's the superhero thing.
Yeah.
He's like, oh no, I opened this woman's door, and I sort of look at him and put my hands in prayer and say thank you so much, and he feels appreciated. You know, just like small little movements like that are really important. But so many women are offended that someone's opening the door for them. I don't really believe it's a real thing. I think it's just a trendy thing, to be honest with you. I think people just copy and paste a lot of what they see on social media. There's absolutely no way a man opening a door for you is offensive in any way.
Yeah.
But some people are living on this planet like they're a victim because it's the only way they feel important. That's something.
Yeah, and then I was going to say, men need purpose, don't they? That's the thing. And I want to share a little story, which is interesting. And people might, I don't know if my wife's watching this. She'll probably kill me for saying this. But anyway, I was having a bad day. You know, we all have bad days, right? And I woke up in the morning just in a shitty mood. It was as simple as that. And she said the question that I'm very, very wary of using myself. And she just said, lovingly, are you okay? Right? And I got all this energy inside me. I'm like, no, I'm not. Obviously, went away. He said, sorry, went away, thought about it. And I went back down and I said to her, and this is where I want to kind of talk about maybe the vulnerability of men and stepping into that female energy a little bit, which was I had all of this stuff that as a man, I had purpose. I should have been able to fix it, but I couldn't. I didn't know who to turn to. So I was holding on to all this energy. And what I said to her was, again, I apologized. And I said, you know, I've just thought about what just happened there. And I recognize that the question, are you okay? It felt like a selfish question, as if I can see you're in pain. I don't know how to resolve it. So I'm going to ask you if you're okay. So that gives me the opportunity you'll probably say you're fine. So I'll move away. I'm not saying that that's what happened. But what I said was, you know, if you ever see me like that again, and this is for all the ladies out there and all the men, a better question is, what do you need? Not what do you need from me? What do you need? Because I said, if you'd have asked me what I needed, even though I had all that chaos going inside, I said, all I would have said is, I just need a hug. I just need to feel held. Now, my wife earns more money than me. So I've had to do a lot of work on I was the main wage earner and then I left the police and, you know, roles were reversed. And I'm so grateful for the hard work that she's done. She's amazing. You know, she's, you know, allowing me to do what I do now while I build my business and while I do everything. So I'm very appreciative of that. That doesn't take away the fact that as a man, I'm going, I should be providing for my family. I should be this. Logically, it makes no sense. And it's nothing against her. But for me, and it was in that moment that it was like the little boy was going, you're not good enough. You're not able to do this. And that the inner child just needed a hug. And we've got a good enough relationship that I can be that vulnerable. But I guess some women sometimes, if a man is that vulnerable, could see that as being a little bit of weakness, especially if they're not in a stable place themselves. It's like, shit, I'm feeling Lily, I'm feeling like shit, and now you're feeling that oh my god, who's going to protect me? I'm not saying that might happen, but I just found that phrase, what do you need, not from me, just what do you need, opens an opportunity just to be seen without actually having to do anything. But it could be something simple that they need. And I think this is what you talked about before. It's actually the simplicity of our communication that can really help. So what do you think that biggest misconception is between men and women on this topic, and kind of how it's impacting society, you know, in a larger way?
Well, I mean, the way that men are building is certainly different. I mean, a really obvious physical example that we can all see, you know, if you look back 100, 200 years, look at the buildings that were made, the structure, the detail in what they made, you know, from the floor to the ceiling. If you look at old architecture, especially in England, you have the most incredible monasteries, churches, buildings that are built so beautifully. They're painted. They've taken years, for one building, because men were so well taken care of in a way. Back in those days, and now we look at modern buildings. You've got some bricks and a roof. That because there's not as much appreciation for men. There's not as much acknowledgement for men, and men feel unappreciated in society in general for what they're doing. And so we see. So I always think that's a really beautiful example. Whenever I go back to England for a trip, I look at the buildings and I'm like, wow. What were these men going home to? Because the fact that they can take that much time and be so delicate with what they've done. Men would build things for women, and now men don't have, they don't have anything to build for. And a lot of podcasts are talking about, if there were no women on the planet, men would be fine. They'd be able to build, they'd be able to hunt, they'd be able to survive. And it's like, yeah, physically, but men do things for women. Notice. Like I notice it as a woman because I feel the energy all the time. Men are in the gym, they're doing what they're doing. As soon as a woman steps into the gym, like, oh, I think I can lift heavier. Actually, I think I can go up a bit. I think I can do this. And he doesn't even have to be necessarily interested in it. It's just the fact that there's a woman in the facility that he wants to do something for her. He wants to kind of impress her. It's nature, and so men do things for women. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that, because it sounds bad, I know, but the quality of woman that's out there at the moment is not the type of woman that men want to build for. And so we kind of see women having to step more into their masculine and men softening into their feminine. And, like what you just said is a really good example, because, I do believe that when we're in our natural role, we feel our best. I was in a relationship for 2 years where I was the main breadwinner, and I watched him struggle in his mind, like what you were saying. I saw it every day, and it was very debilitating for him. He really struggled. I mean, he really did. He wasn't working at all. So his self-esteem went down, and I was doing everything. And in one way, I was like, I don't want to do everything, but if I don't, we can't eat. But I also wanted to encourage him, and yet for him, he just sort of got so lost in his mind that he was unable to provide, that he got really depressed. So I saw that. It's a really clear indication. And then men that are able to do that, they have a different sort of energy. There is a sense of pride, and I'm sure you understand that, like talking about that. And so those roles are really interesting. But I'm a big believer in men and women building together. I really am.
Yeah, we need both halves. We need so with that in mind, then I think if we looked back in the day where there was very clearly defined roles for men and women, which we're not talking energy here. There's those clear roles that women have obviously tried to break through. How do women then gain their independence? How do they live the life that they're completely entitled to do, build their businesses, do all the things that they need to do, but then be able to communicate a safe space for men to interact? Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I've got a son who's 21 in 3 days time. No, sorry, 3 days time. And I've got a 15-year-old, and Harry, my eldest, has talked a lot about this. But it's hard being a man, a young man at the moment. He's like, he's literally kind of had enough. He's 21, and he's had enough. How do we allow women to, live into their independence, do all the great stuff that women have fought for, and rightly so, but then create space and safety for men so that they can create these better unions, not just as partners and sexual partners or loving partners, but also in the workplace, just in society generally. How can we help men and women become more cohesive? What can women do to help men feel safe?
Men are, well, in my personal opinion, for a man to feel safe, we have to be like, women have to be the epitome of love. We have to get to a place of love within ourselves, 100%. I did a whole talk on this on my live yesterday, if anyone wants to check that out. It's agape, right? We have to become love, right? So, when I have male clients, someone such as yourself, someone, even a stranger on the street, I always make it very apparent, and I'm very purposeful in how I show up in my life and in myself, because that way when people are in my presence they feel loved. So if as women we get to that place, whatever man steps into our life, he'll feel loved. Whether you meet him for 5 minutes or you meet him for a lifetime, he will feel loved because he's in the presence of love. I'm actually, I'm not a big believer in independent women. I don't think it works because, I certainly am not, I don't wish to be independent. But I do think in respect for building their businesses and things, obviously I have my company. But I certainly, I use my masculine energy to build it for sure. Burnt myself out many times and learnt the hard way that this is not right. This can't be how we do things. And so, these days my business doesn't run on me pushing myself and working hard and working all hours. I love the work that I do, so therefore I do not work. That's one thing. If you feel like you're pushing yourself and you're working, you're in the wrong. I do not work a day in my life, and I haven't done for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
So there's that to think about. So when women want to build a business, it has to be like something that you love, that you don't feel you're working for. Because if women feel like they're working and pushing themselves, that's when they start to go into their masculine. Women ask me, Laura, how do I soften into my feminine when I'm so stressed? And my answer is, you can't. And you're asking the wrong question. You should be asking, Laura, how do I change my life around? Because my stress is showing me that I can't go into my feminine because I'm living the wrong life. How do I change my life around? That's the right question, not how do I remain in stress. But people tend to think that if they're stressed, they're important and they're valuable, which is absolutely not true. So, it's kind of with women, if you want to build something, you absolutely can. We are creative energies, we're creatrixes. But we have to create something that we love so that we don't feel like we're ever working, and this idea that we have to push and work hard to make money is an illusion.
And conversely with that, with men, if men feel they have purpose and they're protecting, they will hold themselves over broken glass.
Yes.
They're okay with that. Yes. They're okay with pain. They're okay with all of that. If they can drag themselves over broken glass and then know that dragging themselves over that broken glass, they go, I love you, I see you, thank you, then they're fine in pain. you know what I mean? Yes. And that's right. I wanted to give you a reflection of what I see as your feminine, if I may. In kind of answering my own question, I was putting you in a position where I wanted you to sort of try to explain it. So what I see in you is that you sit in your creative feminine self. You exude being feminine, but your masculine is very much about, how to communicate your boundaries. So for me, if I was to look at that picture again, here is Laura as the woman, and there is a soft boundary, masculine boundary around that says, this is who I am, this is what I believe, this is how I communicate, and therefore I see that as your masculine protection, but it's kind of a fluid, it's not a barrier, it's something that can be respected, that you don't go over because you're clear in your communication. And I think this is the biggest thing, isn't it? That what I'm taking from what you're saying is that when women are in their masculine, it's not their natural state. Therefore, how can they communicate? Because they can't. And when men are not truly in their masculine and they're more in their feminine, they can't truly communicate because the communication energy that they're in is wrong. It's as if, I speak English, but I'm living in France and can't communicate, and there's a French lady living in England who doesn't speak English, and she can't communicate because the environment, that energetic environment that maybe society has told us that we need to sit in, doesn't resonate with us. So what we're trying to say here is, from a metaphor point of view, is if you're French living in England and you can't speak English, how do I learn English? Well, just go to France, and vice versa, because then how your natural language, and that doesn't mean you can't learn English. That doesn't mean you can't, go into that environment, but your true environment is going to be with your natural tongue. And I think that's what we're saying about the feminine and the masculine, is that we seem to have flipped our roles as men and women, and therefore we're not showing up as our natural whole selves. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I like what you said there about, you know, the boundary, because people do ask me that, how do I do that? And I believe that we find the tools, and then the more we use the tools, the more we become the tools. So I don't have necessarily tools to have a boundary, but I am the boundary. It's there. There's a part of me that commands respect, and if I don't get it, the punishment of that is that you'll be cut off.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm certainly not gonna close my heart to someone, because that'll be a disservice to myself. But I am going to take my heart and put it somewhere else. So I always try and stay in my heart as much as I can, but I'm very choosy as to what direction that goes to. So that's something that's very important for women. There's this idea that women are supposed to be this love and light space, and it's like, yeah, we are the heart, we live in the heart, but women, we have a womb, we're all about death and destruction. It's like, if you disrespect me, you'll be destroyed. I won't destroy you, you'll destroy yourself. And when women kind of hold that confidence, like, I trust myself and I'm confident in myself. So when you get to that space as a woman, there's less to say. There's really less to say, because we learn that our presence is enough. And the women that I know that are more insecure and haven't kind of got their boundary up yet, or connected to their dark feminine, they have to say more, they're louder, you see them out on the street shouting and loud voices and always talking. It's like, it's quality over quantity. When you tap into that true feminine nature, there's less to say, because you are enough. And a lot of women haven't tapped into the realization that they are enough. And it might be because maybe they're not yet, and that's okay too. Yeah.
And this reminds me of a story I often tell people, is that if we look at nature gives us the balance. And I always talk about lions and lionesses. And when you look at a pride of lions, you've got the big alpha male lion that's got his territory, he's got his girls, he's chilling out and all the rest of it. But when the female lion has got her cubs around, she will defend her cubs. She will defend them to the death. And
Absolutely.
The male lion knows that. And so if you get another lion that's coming into the pride to try and take over the pride, he's got to be really careful, because he wants to kill the cubs because he wants to mate with this lion and it's his offspring. But because he knows that she will die for the cubs, if he kills all the female lions in the pride, then he has no pride. So nature has this delicate balance that the female lion is saying, this is my boundary, you don't cross it, but I will allow you to protect the pride. And I think I love that. That's my own little analogy that I try and think of it, is that I'm allowing you to do that with grace. Not I'm allowing you to do it because I could do it, but I'm allowing you to do it. It's like, because I can look after the cubs, I can be in my feminine, I can hunt, I can do everything that I need to do, because you're providing that overall protection for me. And most animal species work like that, and we're the ones that have really moved out of our natural state. So no wonder we're suffering and going through this chaos, because I'm a great believer, like you said, that the body and the mind, years of evolution, wanted us to keep reproducing. Why would it create a system that wants to destroy us? It wouldn't. It's just that we're destroying ourselves because we're not allowing ourselves to be in our natural state. So we could talk for hours, but I want to just ask one final question before you can tell everybody where you are and they can find you. If you could, from all the stuff that you've learned on your journey so far, if you could leave one lesson to the world, which would create the relationships between men and women and make them more harmonious, what one lesson could you give to everybody watching this today in how they can maybe step into their masculine, step into their feminine, create space and safety for each other, and then help the world become more cohesive, happier, and we live more peacefully?
Well, the main word is acceptance, I think. Accepting who you are. Stop trying to be something else. Because so many people run away from who they are, who they've been born in what they've been born into and who they've become. So, you know, for men, it's like you've been born with, as a man, this masculine body. You've got testosterone. You can go build an empire. You know what I mean? You can do anything. You can create from nothing. You can build from nothing. That, it's pretty sexy. It's very important, and we need that. And when a man does that, he will feel like he wants to wake up every single day. And when he loves his life and he loves himself, he'll change the evolution of the planet. Everything will up level. And for a woman, it's the opposite. If she surrenders into who she is, she will wake up every day with purpose. You know, even in the spiritual realms, there's all this idea of manifestation and, you know, how you can get the life that you want and whatever. It's manifestation. It's not, there's femifestation. I hate that word. I don't like feminine
I've never
words.
even heard of that
I really
before.
don't, hey. I just feel like, because I like masculinity, I love men. So I'm like, feminine, okay, whatever. But, you know, we'll use that as an idea, femifesting. You know, we're not about like,
Sounds
oh, I gotta
dodgy. I'm sorry, it sounds dodgy.
yeah,
It sounds like some sex. Sounds like a sex toy.
it does. We'll get people to look it up. Hey, it's to me, it's like I like men. I like masculinity, so I'll use manifestation. But there's this idea, right? So for women, the reason that they can't manifest what it is that they want in their life is because they're trying to do it in a masculine way. I'll write my affirmations. I'll do this. I'll do that. I'll make a vision board. It's all about building something. But let's leave that for the men. We have a womb, so therefore we carry an empty space. We need to make sure we're constantly clearing ourselves out energetically. Cry, get angry, be joyful, be at peace. You know, cleanse yourself. And when a woman surrenders to her life and surrenders to her path and her story, she will manifest everything. So it's like, accept the natural order. Stop trying to be something that you're not, because you're doing a disservice to yourself. I don't wish to be equal to a man. I want you to go and do what you're so good at, and I'm going to respect that and appreciate that. And whilst you do that, you're going to let me be who I am. And when you just leave things alone, everything works, because we're all connected to nature. And if you try and interfere with nature, you'll be destroyed. You know what I mean? If you go and stand in the eye of a tornado, good luck. You probably will be destroyed. So it's accepting the natural order of things and getting out of the way. Stop thinking that we always know the right thing to do. When you surrender to nature, you know, the natural state of a woman is to be at peace, and to hold that boundary, and to be in love, to live in love. That's a natural state for a woman to be, which most women are far from it, sadly. And for men, you know, to build and to create is such an incredible gift that you guys have. You have the bodies for it, you have the testosterone for it, you have the passion for it. Men need a woman to build for, though. When a man doesn't have a woman, he doesn't know what he wants to build. She's the emotional, spiritual direction. She says, hey, I really need this, the room to be like, I need, it's kind of like a woman says, okay, we've got the land. I know what kind of house we need. We need these furnishings. We need these walls. We need the energy of the brick. We need the energy of the water here in the house and the lake. You know, she kind of comes up with the idea of things, and he says, let me build it. And he does that. And when he does that, she appreciates him, you know. So it's about accepting the natural order of things. You cannot fight nature. You'll never win. You will never win.
It's interesting. What I heard you say there, really, again, I love the metaphor and an analogy. It's kind of the man builds the house, and then the woman creates the home.
100%.
That's what we're really saying there, isn't it? And interestingly, on the manifestation point, is that the action is the masculine, but it's the allowing of the feminine. So when you look at manifestation and you say, oh, I want this, the want goes out vibrationally as a masculine energy, but actually it won't come back to you, because what the universe hears is, I don't have that. And so what you said about that surrender, even though it's called manifestation, when I actually look at the process myself of manifestation, is, yes, I need to have an idea. I need to know what I want, why I want it. I need to, you know, embrace that. But actually, the last stage is letting go that I need it and surrendering. So it might be called manifestation, but if you're building that house of abundance, yes, you have to create the structure of what you want and be really clear and specific on that, but then you just have to let it be. So even if we were to call it manifestation, actually the other half of that is the feminine. So manifestation actually is the perfect cohesion of the divine masculine, divine feminine. And if we're not in our right energy, then that's probably why we're not manifesting the life that we want, right? Because we're not understanding how those two energies interplay to create. And that's what men and women do, right? A man will impregnate a woman, and he's all done in 30 seconds. And the woman is then God. The woman then creates life. So it's really crazy where you go, I don't want to be like a woman, and you're literally a God. You create life. There isn't anything bigger than that. So why would you not want to be in your feminine? And while you're creating that life, the man's out there building all of the other stuff to make that life purposeful, and then you bring that softness in there. And when you think about it, it's so sensible and it makes so much sense, but we're still not doing it. So
yeah, and that's where it starts, right? It's looking at, for women, I say, you want to look at the childhood, the mother wound and the father wound, because if you weren't sort of feeling safe or satisfied with how your father was showing up in your life, you'll become the man. It's like, I don't like how you're doing it, I'll do it. And if we've been hurt, simply for being a woman, which many women have, then again, she's not going to feel safe in her feminine. So, we have to, because women say to me, like, how do I become more feminine? It's like, it's not about becoming more feminine. It's about accepting that you are feminine and working backwards and unraveling all the reasons why you may be afraid to accept that you are a woman and that you are feminine. Because when it comes to manifestation for women, it's not about going after it, it's about becoming it. So it's like, I am money. I am money, and I am love, and I am a home for people. I'm a great home for people. My energy is home for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we become what we want, and then it manifests physically. And so, it's kind of, women have gotten very lost there with the life that they want, because they don't believe that they're enough. They don't believe that they can become what it is that they need. And finances is a big one. We need money to feel safe and to relax and be at peace. You can't be stressing out if you can't pay your electric bill. You can't be in your feminine if you're stressing about you can't pay the mortgage or the rent.
Yeah.
There's no way, So it's about energy. Surrendering and becoming it. Yeah, it's energy.
We could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours. And I've loved this. But more importantly, I want people to find you. I want people to know where you are. So tell everybody where you are. Tell them how they can get hold of you, what you're doing, your Insta. Tell people where they can connect with you further.
So my Instagram is Reigniting Women. My website is also reignitingwomen.com. So the best place for women or men, I do work with men, but the best place for women to start is I have a free masterclass on my website. It's called The Four Veils. Unraveling the Four Veils to the Sacred Womanhood. So that goes through the four main veils that we wear that stop us from seeing our femininity. So it's a full masterclass. It's completely free, so women can check that out. I run a lot of workshops and meet and greets online. I do in-person events. I do womb ceremonies. I'm in Bali in September for a week womb excursion. So, if people want to meet me in person, I'm in the Sydney area, they can sort of join my workshops, or if they want to come to Bali, they can come to Bali and see me. But I do a lot of work online because my clients are all around the world. So they can sign up for workshops. My next one actually coming up is the Dark Feminine, which is that boundary that we talked so deliciously about.
And that
would the Dark Feminine
be amazing, because shadow work is so essential.
Yes.
People want to just stay in the light, but I always say people want to, I'm in the darkness, I want to go to the light. But the truth of the matter is that you have to go through the darkness. And when you go through the darkness is made up of all the colors. So why choose one color when you can choose all of them? And you do need to do the shadow work. It's really important. But that's tough. And that's why you need somebody like yourself or like myself to guide people through that, because you need to know what you're doing when you go into that darkness. So I would probably recommend people do that. I've done a lot of shadow work. So go and sign up for that course.
Thank you.
Amazing. Is there anything else that you want to say before we end this live?
No, just thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's always, I do a lot of these chats and podcasts, and you know, I do a lot with women. It's really a pleasure to come onto a man's channel and have a conversation with a man, because it's a different conversation, it's a different energy. So I you know, I appreciate you taking the time out in your evening to hold space for me to, you know, to provide that masculinity, that roof and those four walls around me, so I can just say what I need to say
Yeah.
and put that energy out, you know. And hopefully people just not even, it's not even really about what I'm saying, it's maybe my presence or the energy I carry or the way I say things. It's kind of, hopefully women will recognize that this is really about being in that feminine space, and hopefully people will notice that I am very you know, I'm not stressed and I'm at peace and I'm okay and I like who I am, and I want my presence to be inspiring, not just, you know, what I say, it's how I show up, and I like to lead by example. And you know, so I think, and men can witness, you know, you as an example of how you've spoken today, how you've held space for me, how you've listened to me, and how you've asked me questions. I hope that men get to watch that and see your example of how men need to show up for women as well, because a lot of men don't know how to treat women. A lot of men come into, you know, that you probably saw the comments today. There's comments that come in that are sort of flirty and maybe a bit sexual, and it's just like, that's just not how you speak to women. It's just not it. You're not going to get my attention by speaking to me like that. As you could see, it got ignored. So, you know, you can be, you get to be a great example for men as well, how to actually speak to a woman and how to make her feel safe. So I appreciate you for that. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been amazing. I hope we chat again. Just keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully that will spread further and further and further and further. And as all of us in this space are trying to help people, you know, build and live an authentic life so they can build more peace, the more people that can do that, it will cause a ripple effect around the world. And I really do believe that, as we start to really understand, I think in all this chaos in the world at the moment, I think there's a real opportunity just to pause. So I think what I'd like to say to anybody who's watching this, if you're watching it live now, if you're watching it afterwards, pop some comments in. If you want to, you know, connect with others, if you want to ask questions, please put a comment in there, DM us if there's anything you want to know about us. But you know, that one little change that we can all make can have a massive ripple effect. And by just allowing yourself, if you're a woman, just allow yourself to know that it's okay to be in your feminine. And guys, it's okay to be strong, but do it with love and compassion and meaning and purpose. And I think just allow yourself to be who you need to be and who you feel you are, because you've got nothing to prove to anybody. You are enough. You always have been. You always will be. And with that, I just say, Laura, thank you very much. And we'll end this live.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
And thank you everybody for joining. And yeah, make sure you go over and follow Laura, because she does some amazing work. And I'll see you all very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.